every single day we wake up trying to make a community that is better for our residents. And I think that if you're going to be an elected official, that should be your priority. Constituent services should always be your number one priority, because ultimately that is what affects people's daily lives.
Welcome to the Set Apart Podcast. I am your host, Oscar Mortajón, and we are happy to have you part of this journey that we've been on. We've gone through several incredible guests that we brought on, and today we have somebody that I care a lot about, somebody that honestly is doing a tremendous impact in our community. I live in District 6, and I'm really happy that we can have Kevin M. Cabrera. He's the commissioner of Miami-Dade County in District 6. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, my friend. A pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really happy that I know you have a super busy schedule. There's a lot of things going on. And as a commissioner, I don't think you need to be as involved as you are. And I know that takes a lot from your time. So I appreciate you being here.
I think it's important. I think if you're gonna do something, you want to be the best at it. And I think part of being the best is being accessible, being in the community, and being responsive. And I think that's what all these sorts of things are about, is making sure that you're accessible to your constituents.
Something that sets you apart.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. Listen, where do you think your story begins in terms of
life?
Yeah, life.
Birth, politics, professional.
I would say just personally, and because it's, people always say, hey, how do you manage your personal life and John Bell's life? And I go, no, I have one life. And can you
who's John? I haven't met John yet.
You haven't met John? I'm gonna introduce you to him one day. He's a good guy. He's fun. He's friends with a couple people that you know. So I'll introduce him to you one day. But no, your life. Where does did you grow up in Miami? Or you product of here? Tell me a little bit more about.
Born and raised in Miami to Cuban parents, first generation American. Like I think so many in our community, and you grow up seeing so many of the things that our families didn't have in the countries they came from, and I think whether it be Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Colombia, there's so many people. Miami really is a melting pot of people coming here seeking a better life, because obviously in so many of our countries, so many of the liberties that we have here were not available to us.
Did you always want to be in government?
So I'd say yes. Most people say the answer is no. I don't want to say government, but I always wanted to serve. A funny story is my mom says that one of the first times she figured out that I wanted to serve was back when she'd be like, oh, you want to come to me to the supermarket? You want to come to me to Publix? And I'd be like, sure, let's go to Publix. She'd be like, well, let's go. I'd be like, hold on a second. I said, one day I'm going to run for office. So, I can't just show up at Publix.
You told her that?
I got to go, I got to go in style. So I would go, I'd put a suit on. I'd grab my grandfather's briefcase. And I'd go to Publix in a full suit and a briefcase. Because I told her,
how old are you?
I said, the people that meet me, they have to, it's your first impression.
I think that's how you got your nickname. Because me, when I grew up, honestly, I wanted to be a baseball player. Did you ever have any aspirations to be somebody other than
Listen, I could tell you I wanted to be a baseball player, but it wouldn't be an honest thought. I was never very good at any of those things. So if I would have wanted to be a baseball player, it would have to be like some we'd have to have like some sort of easy like bumpers in bowling. It would have to be like bumpers in baseball.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't very good at it. But I did always enjoy. I grew up in a home with my grandparents, and they would watch, whether it be the evening news and noticiero, or whether it be Caraza, one of these shows. It was always like some sort of political show on TV, and I found that to be more entertaining to me than watching a cartoon or whatever else somebody my age might have been watching. I was instead watching the politics of the day, and in Spanish. I tell people that most of the times I tend to watch the news in Spanish, or even some TV in Spanish. It kind of keeps me up to date on making sure if you don't use it, you lose it, and you want to make sure that if you are bilingual, that you're able to keep that.
I feel like I remember growing up watching Sábado Gigante.
Yeah, and you see a chacal. So if I would have been a baseball player, they would have brought out a chacal and be like, fuera.
Listen, I think my best memories as a child are with my grandparents. They're drinking café con leche with Cuban crushed crackers
and watching novelas.
And watching novelas.
Yeah, my mom was not a fan of that. That my grandmother had us watching novelas. We were eating picadillo, drinking café con leche, and watching novelas. Well, that was daycare. There wasn't.
Yeah, they left us.
There wasn't VPK. No VPK existed. What we had was abuela, and abuela and abuela would put us to watch novelas, and as she was, putting her rolos on in her bata de casa and cooking picadillo.
Yeah. I think Abuelo will be proud of you. How did you get into politics? Like, how did you get into government? Would you consider it into politics, or what would you consider that you got into?
I'd say service to others. And honestly, the way I got into it is somebody who works with me till today, who's sitting right back there, Gianfranco Pupio, who's worked in our office now for a few years. And I remember we had started off as volunteers together at the local party, and we had knocked on doors for John McCain and for Mitt Romney and those that had been the Republican nominees in the past. And one day he called me and said, "Hey, do you want to knock on doors for Carlos Curbelo? He's running to be your congressman." And I said, "Sure, yeah." I didn't like my congressman at the time, so I said, "Listen, I'm happy to do it." And I jumped in and I helped. And before you knew it, I did a terrible financial decision. I left a great job in the freight forwarding world to go make like 1099 money, no benefits. Sometimes like construction, no benefits, no holidays, no weekends, long hours, and
A tocar puerta.
And it ended up being, but it was fulfilling. It was one of the things most enjoyable I found in my life, and I tell everybody that's why I think it's important. And I tell people that sometimes staffers make the best politicians, because once a staffer, always a staff, right? You get it. You've stuffed envelopes, you've cleaned bathrooms, you put up signs, you've knocked on doors, and I think it makes you a more wholesome individual and a better elected official. And in my case, I was a director of constituent services. So I pride constituent services. Constituent services to me is number one. Sure, you might disagree with somebody on a vote that they took on a policy issue, and we could probably argue that back and forth. But if somebody calls your office and you give terrible service, they'll never forget that. But if you give great service, they'll remember that as well. And ultimately, the most important thing that we're there to do is to be a liaison for the people that you represent with government, and making sure that if they have an issue, if the government is not being responsive to them, that you make sure that you make government responsive to them, because that's what you're ultimately elected to do.
I'll be honest with you. You can sit in that chair and you can say all of that, but the fact is that it's the truth for you particularly. I mean this like in the nicest possible way. You would not be sitting in that seat if I didn't feel that that's the truth. I live in your district. Whenever there's somebody putting, trash out there that they shouldn't put, there's people speeding. Like, you are literally out there before anybody was out there. And I remember I moved into our block and people would say, the war that you're trying to fight with speeding and everything, you're going to lose. And I go, well, you don't know who just got elected into office. And I think it's incredible, because it's like, during the thing was like promises made, promises kept. And, on behalf of everybody, that I know, you've really done everything that you've said to. And, because one thing is to say it, but one thing is actually, to do it.
And I think it's important, because that's why people lose faith in government. People lose faith in government
Absolutely.
when you call and you report things, you report issues, and then nothing happens. And I tell everybody, listen, I'm not always going to guarantee a favorable result. We can't
But you
always
try.
do it, but we're going to try. And we're not just going to try. We're going to try the best of our abilities to make sure that we try to deliver for our residents every single day, whether it be speeding, whether it be a pothole, whether it be a bridge that needs to be cleaned or taking graffiti off, whatever it may be. Every single day we wake up trying to make a community that is better for our residents. And I think that if you're going to be an elected official, that should be your priority. Constituent services should always be your number one priority, because ultimately that is what affects people's daily lives.
Yeah, that's what they care about, at the end of the day. And it's a lot of it has to do with you, but a lot of it has to the team that you have, from Manny as chief of staff to all the people, on like these people are like, it's like if they lived in my house.
And I will tell you, it's not, and here, I try to not be braggadocious or anything, but I think it's my background. Being a director of constituent services, that was my job for many years, making sure that we responded to constituents' concerns. And I tell everybody, I'm happy to have a debate with somebody that might disagree on a vote that I had, on a position that I took. I'll have that debate any day of the week. And that won't really upset me, because that's democracy. That's the beauty of America. But what honestly would crush me and really is if somebody were to ever call and say, we've called your office and they didn't answer, or we've texted you, emailed you, Facebook.
Yeah, that hurts.
And I've never, until now, no one has ever said that, because I can tell you that I'm very much involved in making sure that everybody gets an answer, and making sure that we try our best to make sure that government is responsive, because that's ultimately, again, what we're here for.
Hey, you're there to represent the people.
Exactly. And I think that is the best thing that we can do for our constituents, is to be a voice on their behalf.
And I think you are, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
What do you think is something that you really didn't expect when you were there? Because one thing is to knock on doors and really have that like itch satisfied where you're serving the constituents and you're like, wow, this is amazing. Then you get into this like service role. You're like, I didn't expect this.
I would say probably the amount of time, right, that it takes. I think most of us, if you do it right, probably don't have much of a personal life at all. It's all consuming, right? Because, people say, well, you have 2 meetings a month and a few committee meetings here or there. That's sure. That's how you want to do it, right? But we have town halls. We've done town halls all over the entire district. And a town hall is not 1 day or 1 hour. We've done, I think, up to 10 in all the different parts of the district, because I think it's important that we do it as local as possible. I don't want to do one town hall for the entire district because, people that are working class families, that's hard for them to get to.
What's a town hall?
So we'll do a meeting. We'll advertise it to all the residents in the area. We usually try to do it per city. We have 6 cities in our district, in addition to all the unincorporated areas, which we've done different ones in different parts of it. And we'll sit there and I'll answer questions for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And people will show up. We usually know what are the issues that are pertinent in that area based on all the cases we have in our office. So I'll start off with that, talking about the things we're doing to try to solve those issues. But then my favorite part is the Q&A, right? Because I go there, this is what we're going to try to answer, right? These are the things we're working on. But I think the Q&A is what really shows you, what's the sense on the street? Like, what are the people talking about? What do they really need?
Yeah.
And what we do is it's not just me by myself. Because if it's me by myself, I know some answers, but I'm not a traffic engineer, right? I'm not a park expert. So we bring all the departments as well. We bring a representative from each department so that when you ask your question...
Yeah, you don't need to wait an email or anything.
We can try our best to get you an answer right then and there. And we might not be able to, but our goal is to try to get you that answer as quickly as possible. And again, on average, it's about 2.5 hours of me answering questions, which I don't mind at all. The Q&A is actually my favorite part because you get, again, a real sense of what's driving the community.
And how can somebody find out about something like that that's happening?
We'll put them on our social media, which is KM Cabrera FL on Twitter, Facebook, and on Instagram as well. We don't do TikTok. Apparently, it's getting banned, so I don't know. But we'll also, we'll text it out. We'll send a mail as well to folks. My goal is always, I know some people do meetings and they want as little as people as possible to show up to not ask questions. Mine is the opposite. We want 100 plus in each of our town halls, and we usually do get 100 plus, and it's a healthy crowd. And sometimes, at that number, it's just right where people feel comfortable enough to ask questions, that the group is not too big, that they feel shy or what have you.
It's intimate enough.
It's intimate enough, and you also can have a robust discussion, which I think is what ultimately these things are about. And they honestly, a lot of times they generate policy ideas.
Yeah, that you're like, hey, this is something that we should. Why haven't we been doing this?
Exactly, and who better to give you ideas than the people who are out there every single day driving on our streets, going to our parks, driving, going to our airports, public transportation. They ultimately are the ones that experience the county every single day and can provide you feedback on how to really, improve our services.
There's a lot of things that you're doing like good, but I'm sure that with good things happen, bad things happen. What's something that you feel that is something that's been an obstacle, something that's tough that's happened in your life, maybe recently, or some challenge that you faced? Something that comes to mind?
I say losing my dog. That's probably the toughest thing. He was probably my best friend, and so losing him was definitely a challenge.
Wow. Especially that, like, your man's best friend, like they say. I wasn't expecting that answer. Somebody that's going into politics, somebody that's going into, service, 3 things quickly that you would tell Kevin Cabrera, 20 years ago.
Volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. I tell everybody the best job I ever had in politics is to be a volunteer, right? You get to show up when you want, you leave when you want, you get pastelitos, you get cafe. But ultimately what it gives you is a holistic view of what it is to be involved in politics. The best job I ever had was, again, to be a volunteer. I started on a congressional campaign and also on some of the 2008 and 2012 presidentials. And it really gets your feet wet. And everybody always tells you, well, how do I get involved? How do I get a job in politics? Listen, there's an application process to work at the county and the official jobs, but on campaigns, which is where I really think you cut your teeth, there's no application process. The application process is showing up, volunteering, and putting up 15-yard signs or knocking on 100 doors.
Or passing out turkeys or passing out toys.
But let me tell you, knocking on doors is one of the most humbling things that you can do. Because, again, you get to really learn what people's concerns are. And when you're at that door and people are telling you your concerns, you're trying to figure out what are you going to answer, how are you going to fix these problems, there's nothing more humbling than that.
Last year for Christmas, we went with Miami-Dade County Police Department, and we went passing out turkeys, door to door. I'll be honest with you, that hour that I was out there, like it still to this day impacts me because you don't really realize how much people needed a $20 turkey. You don't realize the conditions that they're in. Like it's so like almost like breaks your heart, you know, like, and to be, because I may not be in politics, but we are in the business of serving, you know, that's who we really are. We are here to serve our clients, our people, our employees. And I think those times are super important to really humble yourselves, because not every day is a podcast drinking wine. There's some days that people don't have enough food to feed themselves, you know.
And I will tell you, listen, I think it's no mistake that nobody's surprised at my next statement, right? I'm a Republican. I worked for President Trump, was endorsed by President Trump, and I think the last 3.5 years have been a complete disaster. And I think unless you're in the top 1%, unless you have money in the stock market, you're a millionaire or billionaire, your life's not better today than it was 3.5 years ago. The likelihood is that you're working 2 to 3 jobs just to get your family ahead. So yes, that $20 turkey does make the difference, because that may be one less hour that you have to work in one of your 3 jobs to be able to feed your family.
Which leads me to something that I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. You know, we're going to get to President Trump and your relationship with him, you know, soon. But the reality is that there's a lot of good that comes with that, but there's also a lot of bad. You know, there's a lot of hate. You know, how do you navigate, you know, the haters? Because I think that you're associating yourself with Trump or even just Republicans. How do you manage that and allow yourself to still be focused at answering that abuelita's, you know, question that she was having at that town hall?
So a few different things. One, I think Speaker Boehner said it best: do the right things for the right reasons. And, you know, I think, as they say in rap, haters gonna hate. And whether it be the Miami Herald, which asked me all sorts of inappropriate, biased, somewhat probably racist questions when I did my interview with them, or whether it be people at the door that might have been offended by the fact that Trump supported me because I had worked for him and because he's my friend. I think, again, you stay the course. You do the right things for the right reasons. At this point, I will tell you what's amazing is, I guess, no one's surprised at this point that I support the president, that he supports me, that we're friends. So nobody attacks me anymore based on it. I think they've given up. But for many times, the Herald said all sorts of terrible things. The Herald not only accused me of being all sorts of names and all the sorts of terrible things, in addition to my opponents, my previous opponents, although now we have NDA, so we can't discuss most of that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's incredible. The questions that they asked in the Herald editorial interview were crazy. Ridiculous. And then today you hear that I think I heard that the person that was part of that interview is getting a Pulitzer Prize or finalist for a Pulitzer Prize. They should get the opposite of that, you know, because they're not an editorial board. They're liberal activists is what they are. Yeah. So it is what it is. But I think you learn that, you know, I will tell you the recent polling that I've seen, what honestly makes you feel better is that the people don't care what the Herald says. The Herald's endorsement has been wrong so many times. And so it's somewhat irrelevant. Only 13% of our population get their news from Miami Herald.
Yeah, so as before, it was like almost 80, 90% maybe.
So I would tell you that it's very telling, the amount of trust that people have in them. So that goes to show you that they don't really believe the lies that they peddle.
Well, one thing is the people that are, let's say, maybe against you, but the reality is then with who you are, what you've done, your relationship with Trump, you can also get a lot of friends.
Absolutely.
But maybe, have you ever thought, I'm sure you have to think about it on a daily basis, that you're like, I don't know if that person is really my friend. You know, is that person really who they say they are? Because, you know, if things really hit the fan, we're going to find out quickly who's who. You know, like, is that something that worries you or bothers you or concerns you ever?
I don't know if it worries or bothers me. I think in life you just have to be realistic, right? And I think when you're in politics, particularly when you get elected, for whatever reason, you get better looking, you get funnier, you get more slender, you get all these compliments. But in reality, you realize that, you know, the day you're no longer elected, you're less funny, you're less better looking, and all these things. So you realize that a lot of these things are all somewhat, I guess, transactional. But you have to go in there knowing that.
You understand that.
And again, you can't let yourself be blinded by these sorts of things. And you do the right things for the right reasons. You follow your heart, you follow your gut, and you stick to your principles. And no matter what anybody says, no matter what, you know, sort of fake news media outlet out there says, you stick to the truth, and you do what you were elected to do, which the people ultimately believed in you. And in my case, over 65% of them thought that I was the right person to represent them. So therefore, I have to do what in my heart of hearts I think is right. not what is popular. You don't got to put your finger up in the wind to see which way it's blowing, to see which way you're going to vote. You don't got to do polls to see how you're gonna vote on a certain item based on a poll. No, you do what's right.
I think that's,
and a lot of the times, what's popular is not always what's right, but history will eventually judge you differently.
That's true. I think that, I know you said volunteer. For what would you recommend for somebody? But I think that's such a good advice to somebody, really, because they can get really cloudy in your world, And I think that I have seen, with a little bit that I am, associated with government, is that the people who stick to their guns, that do the right thing, that are just trying to serve the constituent that voted for them, are the people that last. And that's it seems like so simple, but you get so confused and so wrapped in this tornado, and before you know it, you're not serving anybody. You're serving yourself.
Listen, if you try to make everybody happy, you're going to make everybody unhappy. That's what's guaranteed. So ultimately, what you have to do is what's right and let the cards lie where they lie. If you have to worry about re-election, about how you're going to vote on an item, then you probably shouldn't be elected. You should vote for whatever the right thing is. And if people don't want to elect you anymore because you voted for what you thought was right and they didn't think so, then so be it. Yeah. And I think
I think that sets you apart, Kevin, to be honest with you. Because not everybody's like that.
When I go to sleep at night and I put my head on my pillow, I know that I feel comfortable with the decisions I've made. And I haven't made them because that's what's popular or not popular, or because, these are what you should do or not do. It's because that's what I deem to be the right thing to do.
Well, I hope that you continue to do that for as long as you're in service. The President Trump, you talked previously about Trump. I voted for Trump. I'm a big Trump supporter. I can't wait to take a picture of him. Maybe you want to take me one day to Mar-a-Lago. I'll drive you there. How was your relationship with him? How is he, as a person, other than what people, see?
What I tell everybody is, he's characterized a lot about a tweet or this or that, but I'll tell you a few things. One, he's one of the most humble, nicest, most caring people I've ever met in my life. Generally cares about you. I've privately briefed him, I don't know, a handful of times, met with him, I don't even know how many times at this point. And every single time, it's not all political. It's asking you about your family. How are your parents doing? How's, your spouse? How's this? How's that? He actually cares. And that's what sometimes people don't get. And, he's demonized in so many ways, which is completely unfair, when he is just a human. He is a human, and he is one of the most, again, humble and caring people I've ever met in my life. And working for him was the honor of a lifetime. Having his endorsement, I'd say, is even double of an honor of a lifetime. And now, honestly, supporting him, I look at it as, it's so gratifying to be able to give back to somebody who's given me so much.
So you worked with him when he was running for president or was president?
So when he was running for re-election, I was his state director in Florida. We had 250 staffers, 48 offices, $40 million budget, and our job was to deliver Florida. And we did so in a pretty good way. We tripled the results from 16 to 2020, and I would say what we did is, the same way I said volunteer. We focused on voter registration. And we did such a good job that, in my opinion, we set the tone for how we've continued to decrease the deficit. And today, when President Obama wins in 2008, there's 770,000 more Democrats than Republicans registered in Florida to vote. Today, there's 910,000 more Republicans than Democrats. So it's a huge swing.
1.1
I could tell you that our team,
8 million,
over the course of 18 months, registered 65,000 people.
Wow.
And that is the emphasis we put on voter registration. I think we created a culture within the Republican Party, within all the different county parties, and we set the tone for what has continued to grow. And in my opinion, Miami-Dade County will be a Republican county within the next year and a half. We've cut in half in the last 2 years the Republican versus Democrat deficit, and we will continue to do that. Every single month, we have more Republicans registered than Democrats.
Wow.
So within the next year and a half, you will have a Republican Miami-Dade County. Within the next couple of months, you're going to have a Republican Hillsborough County. So the Florida in general is flipping county by county to Republican. Counties that have been Democrat forever. Florida has never had a Republican majority in voter registration in the history of the state. And right now, we have 910,000 more Republicans than Democrats. And I will tell you, in large part, it's because of President Trump. He grew the party. He brought more people to the party. People want to call him all these sorts of names. The reality is he attracts all sorts of new people to the party. He is winning the Hispanic vote right now, 39 to 34%. He will be the first Republican presidential candidate ever to win the Hispanic vote. And again, it's because all of our families, and by and large Hispanics, we saw what open borders, we saw what defunding the police, we saw what lack of law and order, what it causes. It destroyed our countries. And we came here. We're not coming here to look for more of the same.
Yeah, they're quickly realizing it. You know, one thing is, you know, at the federal level, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of things locally that, you know, as much as you want to help and push, you know, the party, like you say, as a state, you know, that person still needs service here and, you know, in your district. There's different things. I want to talk about the permitting system, the airport right now that's getting a lot of heat, the septic to sewer. I'm on a septic tank. You know, I only have a 7,000 square foot lot, and 1,000 square foot of my lot is dedicated to something that I can't even use, and improving our parks. Let's start with the permitting system. I know that this was, you know, near and dear to your heart from the beginning of your campaign. What have you seen in the permitting system, specifically in Miami-Dade County?
So one of the reasons
which impacts us significantly as a contractor.
So one of the reasons I ran is because it took me 7.5 months to do my septic to sewer conversion permits. I bought a house. At the time, it was in Silver Bluff, and it had a septic tank. And I did the inspection. They said it was failing. They said that I needed to replace it. I attempted to replace it. When I went to go get my permit, they said, no, we have a lateral. You must connect. I said, cool, I'll connect. That process took 7.5 months. 7.5 months of being ping-ponged around like a little ping pong ball from department to department, from window to window, and that was incredibly frustrating. And I said, this is why people get frustrated with government. This is why they think that government doesn't serve them. And that was one of the main reasons why I ran, and one of the things we focused on. One of the things we passed was creating one central portal. So you don't have to go to a different portal in every single department. So you have one portal with all the same information. If we're one county, why does water and sewer and Durham have different portals? That makes no sense.
So now it's together?
It should have. They're
working on that?
We passed a resolution directing the mayor to create one portal, which is what they're working on now. In addition to that, is giving timetables to each of these permits, so that they're more, to make sure that they're done on time, to make sure that they're not taking an unnecessary amount of time. So again, it's making it more efficient. It's creating, and listen, Miami-Dade County, what I've been told by contractors by and large is we have our issues, but there are so many other cities, I won't single them out right now, that are significantly worse. But that shouldn't be, the bar shouldn't be that low.
Yeah.
Right. We should be, no matter if we're better than everybody else, we should still be the gold standard. And I have always said that if places like Jacksonville, you can get your permits in 30 days, you should be able to do the same here.
No, I've as a contractor that works in, dozens of municipalities, I would say that Miami-Dade County is probably the best one. I don't know if it's the fastest one to retrieve a permit, because getting comments and that process moving rather than getting a permit is completely different things. But the process that the county has is definitely one of the best. But us as contractors hope that it can only get better, because if we can get better, because we are listening to people that they like, hey, my wife's pregnant and we want to do this addition, or hey, my practice has grown so much, we need to grow. And it really becomes an impediment to the people's success and the people's growth personally and professionally when the system is, so slow.
Well, the faster you do it, ultimately, the faster you can get onto the next project, right? You can hire more people. You can generate more business for our county, more economic activity. So again, there's a limited amount of contractors in the county, right? So the faster that they can finish a project, the faster they can get started on that next one.
No, if all, not only the county, but if all municipalities can increase the amount of time that our clients receive their permit just by 10%, I would say that we would probably double, if not triple, in revenue. We have right now like 10 projects that don't have a permit that we have a contract for. So that's that. It really puts a big burden on us, and especially prices have gone up, the price of wood, the price of steel, the price of concrete. So it literally puts a big burden in our heart where we have to tell the client, hey, from the time that you gave us a contract to the time you have a permit, the prices of material went up, 10%.
Well, the other thing too is that, listen, I think it's an honorable job to be a permit expediter, right? But that seems like a job, like a problem looking for a job of sorts, right? Like it shouldn't exist. It should be that you apply for your permit and you get it in an efficient manner. Like that's an industry that should not exist. It exists because there's a problem. So we should fix the problem so they don't have to exist. And again, it's an honorable job and industry. I'm not, dinging it. But again, it should not exist, because that just means that we have a huge problem in which this industry has to exist.
No, I agree. There's a lot of people that have jobs that if other issues, it's like the people that send money to Cuba and close to Cuba and all the, like if if Cuba wouldn't be who Cuba is, those people from one day to another want to have a job, and those people probably shouldn't have a job. The airport, obviously, I go to the airport all the time, and I know there's a lot of like heat or whatever you want to talk about the airport. What's happening with the airport? What's preventing, because you're watching like Only a Date and stuff like that, and it may be the simplest thing, but the perception of people is that this airport is like falling apart.
So the airport happens to be my district. Only in Dade happens to also be in my district. Their office. They're right off of Bird Road. They're right down the street.
Right.
So what I will say is that one of the things that I care about the most is making sure that it's first of all, it's the first thing and the last thing you see when you come to our county, when you come to any city within our county. So it's important for it to be to put our best foot forward, whether it be now for the upcoming World Cup, whether it be for all the other events that we have here, whether it be Formula One, whether it be the Sony Open, whether it be the Super Bowl, which we've hosted plenty of times. We want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. And I can tell you is that I was the author and passed an item that was a contract to renew all of our escalators, elevators, and moving walkways in the airport. We are investing in a historic amount of money. Now, we can sit back and we can debate how we got here. Who's to blame? I don't really think that serves a whole lot of purpose. I think what we have to do is make sure that we move forward and make sure that this never happens again. And what I can tell you is the airport has the necessary resources so we can continue every single year to work our way. And listen, it's going to take time. Something that has, you have some escalators and elevators that are 40 years old. Their lifespan is 20.
Yeah.
So clearly it's a problem that's been exacerbated over many years. So they have the necessary funding now to replace all of them. But again, it's going to take time. It's going to take 1 or 2 years to get that process going. So you can get, 30 to 40 changing every year. You can't change them all at the same time.
Where would people go?
Exactly, where would people go? The roof, we've passed a contract to replace the entire roof and to do temporary replacements while we're replacing the whole roof. The bathrooms, we passed a contract where we're going to replace every single bathroom at Miami International Airport. I think we've done 40 out of the 300 that we have. So we're well on our way to doing, 40 to 50 a year. So people will start to see significant changes, in my opinion, in the next year to year and a half. The train, it's back and running. We're building a brand new hotel at the airport. The last hotel that's been there, it's been there since the 60s. So they're going to have a brand new state-of-the-art hotel, convention space. That is what the industry standard is now. All of the passenger loading bridges, which is where you get on and off of the plane, they're all going to be glass. We passed a contract to replace all of them. We're doing about 30 to 40 a year. We've got 140 of them in total. So again, you're going to see significant changes.
Parking garage too.
The parking garage. We just started a brand new parking garage. The parking garage actually, while it is a parking garage, right? And people say, oh, it's just a garage. Sure, but I will tell you that it's one of the first things that shows that we're being forward thinking. We're building a garage that we don't necessarily need right now, but we know that we're going to need within the next couple of years. So we're being proactive. We're not waiting for the problem to exist. We're not waiting to run out of parking spaces. We've seen our growth, that every year we're getting an extra couple of people, right? Last year we had 54 million people. So again, we're being proactive. We're building the garage now so that it's built within the next year or two. So by the time we need it, it's built, it's ready to go, and it's in use. And we're not waiting for the problem to exist to then attempt to solve it.
I feel like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, there's this guy that 20 years ago was passing out, door to door, with your colleagues, just serving, volunteering, and that has kind of like grown to a point where then you're like volunteering, then you're like, hey, I want to serve, and you're helping people. Then you're talking about one of the biggest airports, in the world, essentially. Like, to me, it's crazy that the same person that 2 years ago knocked on my door, I didn't even know, even who you were at that point. That same person that's knocking on the door is talking about, the airport. I think it's probably one of the craziest things about, government and politics is that the same person that is filling papers and envelopes in writing written letters is also talking about, spending hundreds of millions of dollars, renovating our airport.
And again, I think one important thing to note for the viewers and for the residents of our county, because I know a lot of times what I've heard from some folks is, well, you spent all this money at the airport that could otherwise be spent on this or that. That's not true. The airport is an enterprise department. The only money that goes into the airport is user fees. You're only paying for the airport if you fly through the airport. Property taxes don't go to the airport. Airport money doesn't go to your property taxes or to building roads. All the money that's made at the airport stays at the airport. All the money that's not in the airport does not go to the airport. So it's all self-contained.
It's like a business.
Exactly. It's treated like a business, same as water and sewer. Some of those departments are treated as enterprise departments, which is basically a separate business unit. Those are part of the requirements from the state of Florida, from the FAA. So sometimes it's important to note that, because people say, well, you're spending all these millions of dollars. This is true, but this is money from the airport staying in the airport. And making sure
I didn't know that.
the folks that pay for the airport are the folks that fly through the airport. Or if you eat at the airport or do some sort of business at the airport.
I didn't know that, because I know that like parks is a big thing that we're trying to work on, or we as in, I consider us but that you and the regular commission, the rest of the commission, the board of commission is really trying to improve parks, from our district to every single district.
But that's one of those things that comes out of general funds. That comes out of your.
So how do you
taxes.
differentiate the difference between, hey, we want to lower our speed limit from 35 miles to 25 miles an hour? That's you think that might be simple, but it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of speed bumps that cost money. But then there's a park right next to our office that park needs to somehow be renovated, maybe made safer. Like, how do you as a commissioner, what's that discernment that you can say that park needs maybe more fixing?
Well, we do a lot of, that's where the town halls come into take, right? That's where doing events in the community and talking to the residents and seeing what's a priority to them and making sure that they're part of the equation. We're not just deciding on our own, look, this is what we're going to do. I can tell you, a lot of times, and you've experienced this, people say, we need a speed bump. Everybody on my block wants a speed bump. I'm going to tell you something. It's probably not true. Usually half of the people want a speed bump, but the other half don't.
I remember the time you told me, hey, I want a speed bump, and I don't have a speed bump.
Exactly. The reality is that if you want a speed bump, first of all, the 4 people that are abutting the speed bump all have to be in agreement 100%, which a lot of times it's harder said than done. And it's the same thing for the street. You need a certain percentage of the people that are on the street to be in agreement with the speed bump. And the same thing with, whether it be a speed bump, whether it be a stop sign, all these sorts of things, they require, input and buy-in from everybody on that block. Yeah. And in the community. So again, I always tell people, I say, when you want to speed bump, I said the most important thing is, first thing is go talk to your neighbors. Your neighbors know you better than they know me, and it's important for you to knock on the door and explain to them why it's important. So when they get that survey in the mail, they're voting yes.
I think that's when I was attempting to get a speed bump on our block, it was like, which would talk to me about because you had told me about this, talk to them. Maybe they don't want it. It makes a lot of noise. It does.
Cars are stopping in front of your house. You'd be surprised. I've heard them all.
No, there's a lot of negative things that can happen with a speed bump. But I remember people telling me, I think it's funny, honestly, because they said it's a battle. You're not going to win. And I think it's something that I really admire about you. And honestly, I admire about your whole office, from the person, from you to all the way, at the, not the bottom, but, the person that does the most clerical, job, is that it didn't matter if they had been talking to somebody else maybe before you for 20 years. You said, okay, well, this, if it matters to you, it matters to me. And you did a study and the whole thing, like, it's a process. So in our case, it was successful, but in other cases, it may not.
And in plenty of cases, it hasn't been successful, I could tell you, and hopefully it hasn't provoked any sort of issues amongst neighbors. But I do tell everybody, I said, first thing you should do before we even endeavor down this is canvass your neighborhood, talk to your neighbors. Nobody knows them better than you. You probably lived there for years next to them, and try to convince them, because what you want is make sure you have buy-in before we go down this path, because you don't want them to vote no, and then all the work you did goes out the door. Exactly.
All right, well, listen, before we ask a question, you got to take a sip. We're going to ask you a couple questions. I'm going to ask you 9 different questions. You have 3 seconds to answer these questions.
Oh.
Okay. So it's going to be right off the cuff.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. All right. Want to take a sip?
Okay, we're going to take a sip. We're going to take a sip, because if we're going to do rapid fire.
Yeah. The purpose of this is to really see where your heart's at. So hopefully you answer, correctly. Or the ones that I think you would answer correctly. Favorite sport?
Politics.
Favorite coffee spot?
Tinta y café.
That's a good one. That's my favorite. Favorite place to eat?
Americana Kitchen at the Lowe's in Coral Gables. Best shrimp cocktail in all of the country.
That's a new place. Favorite time of the day?
The morning. I have less calls.
How early in the morning?
6.
No, nobody calls me at that time. Favorite day of the week?
Every day is the same day. Every day is the Groundhog Day. You wake up, and whether it be Saturday or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for us, there's usually an event, and there's usually all sorts of things to do.
Mine's Saturday. I spend with my family. Nickname you've been given?
Posti.
Posti. If you don't know what that is, Google it. Best piece of advice that someone has given you.
Do the right things for the right reasons.
Favorite part about your job?
Helping people.
And what's the first thing you do when you get home?
Well, first thing I do is open the door. I think you got to open the door in order to get in, and then take off my shoes because I'm not allowed to walk around inside the house with my shoes on.
No, that's a good one. I think that's disgusting. You don't realize because in this Cuban household that we grew up in, it's kind of like normal.
Well, you can get catarro if you walk around without your shoes, though.
That's because
the
sereno.
Yeah, because it's sereno. You got to be careful too. You have to at least have the socks on.
Yeah, you have to have socks on. If not, that's. But I think if you really think about it, you walk into the door of your house. You went to the gas station that day. Look at look at the floor of the gas station the next time you go, and you're gonna.
I don't know, man. I go to clean gas stations.
I don't know.
Max
I think
Alvarez, he's a good friend of mine. He has a lot of gas stations here. They're all.
I think even Max's are dirty. You don't know what's happening on the floor, so take off your shoes when you get to the house. And if somebody is barefoot when you go to somebody's house or they have socks, take off your shoes because they're giving you some signals. And my kid's like walking on the floor. He's crawling. You think I want to have, your dirty shoes on my floor?
Well, I would go a little bit step further. I think imagine those are the same shoes that you probably walked into a public bathroom.
Coño, bro.
And then now you're walking into your home, into your bedroom. Just saying.
I'm about to take off my shoes when I leave my car. We've gone through so many different things, and I hope that the people have been able to really get to know a little bit more about you because even me, I see you from afar. I don't talk to you on a daily basis. I talk to you maybe, I don't know, once a year. And I think it's important.
I think you got to correct that. Once a year?
Every 6 months?
I think that was a
okay, 6 months.
You lowered it.
Every 6 months, I'll because you're busy, and I think that I think it's important that people really see who you are as a person. And maybe there's something that matters to them, and maybe they go to Tinta Cafe and have some coffee to tell you that something. It's important. I think that people realize that the people who are in government are just normal people, and I think that is a big misconception. I think that they feel that everybody in government is corrupt and that everybody just wants it for the wrong reasons. And I think that you, like many other people in the in this county. They're honestly here to serve people. And like they say, you can't trust the government. But at the end of the day, the government is there to represent you. And you may not like it. But at the end of the day, what they're voting for is
in the words of Reagan, trust but verify. And I would say, ultimately, if there's anything I tell people is know who your elected officials are, get involved, contact them. Be involved, because if you're
that's such great advice.
Because if you're not, you know what I hear all the time. This is what I hate to hear, and I'm going to go on a little diatribe here. I hate when I go to a town hall and somebody will tell me, no, we're having this issue, and I say, well, have you ever reported it? No. I'm like, what do you mean you haven't reported? I said, how can we fix something you don't report?
Yeah.
It's important that if you're having an issue, whether it be speeding, traffic, theft. A lot of times people don't know that they've been doing a bunch of theft in my neighborhood. I said, well, have you called the police? They're like, no. I said, but that's how they allocate resources, right? The police at the end of the year, they sit down and say, well, how many calls do we have here versus here? And if you're not calling, you're not reporting, how can they fix it?
I just feel like sometimes I feel like people just don't listen.
I understand that, but I would say that you can't lose faith, because if you lose faith, they say in Spanish, lo último que se pierde la esperanza. And I think you have to keep trying, because if you lose faith, then what's left? And I think, are there bad apples in the bunch? Sure. Are there bad politicians? Sure. There's also, bad people in every other industry, right? We just get a bigger rap than others because I guess we're more in the limelight. But I think it's important to know that just because you hear a story about one or two of them doesn't mean they're all the same.
Yeah.
And by and large, most of my colleagues, most of the people that serve our community care. And it's important that you reach out, you articulate the issues that you're having in your community, and you give them the opportunity to fix it. Because if you don't call, they can't fix it. I think
I never thought of it like that. And then I imagine it like almost like a church and like a pastor. People feel that just because he's a pastor, like not everybody's like that. A lot of most of the people are a lot better than you really think. You put these things in your mind that you think, no, the church is. I don't think you can go to any church and they ever admit that we're perfect. Same thing with government. I think that no one's gonna say, hey, we're not perfect. It's we're normal. You guys are normal people. that it's essentially you're fighting on our behalf. So the more involved you are, the more you volunteer, the more you talk to them, the more you're really going to realize who's who. And if you don't like it, then go vote.
Yeah, but I'd say give everybody the opportunity, right? And I agree with that last statement, because a lot of times people tell you, well, no, I don't like this person or that person. I'm like, well, and then you find out they don't even vote. Like, well, you don't like the people that represent you, but you don't even take the time to vote. I said, you got to vote. You got to vote, and you've got to, that's the best way you can express your opinion.
And support them, not only voting, but whatever you can do to, for the cause. Because there's very few good people, and if you feel that person is good and you've done your research, then support them. Don't be scared to repost something that they have on Instagram or social media, whatever it might be. Like, your livelihood and maybe their livelihood is at stake. So, who would you say is Kevin Cabrera? At the end of the day, we talked about so many things on this podcast, but deep down inside, you've walked in your house, you opened the door, you didn't open the window, you opened the door, you took off your shoes.
I don't open the windows anymore. When I was in high school, then that's when you open the window to sneak in and sneak out.
No, yeah, I know. Me too. I used to put aluminum foil on the little sensor, para que no se, so it wouldn't go off.
Me and my sister used to put tape. We used to tape the alarm sensor to the other one, and then it wouldn't beep.
When you're in your house, you take off your shoes, and you're by yourself. Who's that guy? Like, who do you think? Who do you think you are? Who are you?
I thought, listen, we're just a normal person like anybody else. We're a normal person who's, we bleed like everybody else. We hurt like everybody else. We have feelings like everybody else. We just, to a certain extent, we have a charge to try to do better on behalf of our community. To try to make things better for everyone else. To look at the problems that we have and try to articulate different answers in which we can try to address these problems. But I'd say I'm a normal person like anyone else.
I think so too.
Listen, when a lot of the folks on the dais talk about being, attorneys or what have you, I'll tell you, listen, I'm just a simple man. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an engineer. I'm not none of those things. I'm just a simple man who has the honor of our lifetime to represent the residents of District 6.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. As a resident of your district, I think you're doing a lot of good for us. I hope that in the first episode, I talked about how sometimes you just got to be silent so you can hear the whispers of your heart. I hope you get into spaces where you can really feel convicted and feel humbled so that you can really humble yourself back to the roots in which you started, and that you don't get sucked into this vacuum, and that what you said today honestly continues forever as you grow in your career, as you grow personally and professionally.
Well, hopefully, I'm not elected forever. I didn't get into this to be elected for life. I get into this to do a little bit of good, and then you got to go back and you got to make a living like everybody else, and you got to be a functioning member of society.
Well, honestly, it's funny you say that because I was going to ask. I'm going to ask it now because I skipped it. So, what do you think is a goal of yours personally then?
Honestly, it's to leave this district, to leave our county a little bit better than what we found it.
Is that a personal or professional goal?
I would say both. I live here, right? I tell people at the end of the day, I have to go home in the same community that I represent. I don't go and live in a different state or a different city. I said I go home to the same district that I represent. So it's important to me, whether it be adding a stop sign where my neighbors say that they're speeding, or whether it be adding a speed bump, to see that now my neighborhood is a little bit safer. It's a little bit better. And I think that ultimately, I get excited about the little things, about saying, oh, wow, we got the speed bump done. Oh, look, we have a 4-way stop here now where people were speeding before. Those are the things that excite me. Or synchronizing our traffic system in our county, or lowering the speed limit in our residential area so it's consistent at 25 miles an hour. Right here where you're at, you have unincorporated, you have South Miami, then unincorporated, then South Miami. You've got this weird area where you have like 3 different municipalities with 3 different speed limits. West Miami's on the other side. And that's inconsistent. Now, what type of a driver is going to be driving through a neighborhood and go up between 25, 35, 35, 25? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. So little things like that about making our residents' life easier and making it safer. Because ultimately, the lower the speed limit in a residential area, the less the likelihood that a kid might get hit and killed. Than an old person who's crossing the street with a walker, with a wheelchair, with cane, is going to be injured in some sort of way. So again, it's about making sure that we leave our community better than we found it.
Well, I think that's something that we share significantly in common. It's something that I feel that is something I care a lot about you because here as a company, our mission is to serve people. We are not. The first company I used to work for, they said that we're not in the business of building buildings, but we're in the business of building people and serving people. And we moved that. You know, you don't need to create a new mission statement. Sometimes you don't need to create your own core values. Sometimes other core values that you've listened to that have been ingrained in your mind are the same ones that you can, do. And for Kevin, it might be to, make a difference through speeding or some other thing. But wherever you are, I hope that you also make a difference, be it, where you're working at work, or maybe you're working, I don't know, wherever it is that you're doing, being a stay-at-home mom, or that you are setting yourselves apart from the rest. Because at the end of the day, we have a certain amount of time on this earth, and I think it's important that we make a difference no matter what we do, be it servant leadership through the government or servant leadership through, maybe running a business. You have a role. It doesn't matter what you do. People are seeing, people are following you, and everything is relative. So thank you for joining. Hope you can subscribe, follow, share, like. The support, honestly, has been ridiculous. It's been incredible, undeserving, to be honest. So I hope that you can continue watching, sharing. We are pouring our heart out here. We're pouring our life out here for you to really realize what we do, what we care about, and the things that we love as John Bell's Construction. So stick around.